Welcome to the newest video, guys. This is going to be something different from the rest of the videos on my channel already. So I've put together a bit of a tutorial on how to make a highlight video because it's really important for young players and players with a short CV to know how to make a good highlight tape that they can send out to people, coaches, scouts, agents, in hopes of making a connection. Before you can even think about making a highlight film, you need to be in a team where you're playing in competitive games that are filmed. Training sessions are no good. Pickup games are no good. You want these to be competitive matches. When I first started making my own highlight films, there was so much I didn't know, and I learned along the way what to avoid and what to include in those videos that I was sending out. My goal for this video is to teach you in about 10 minutes what my experience taught me over the course of 3 years. Just a quick heads up, I'm using a MacBook Air and Davinci Resolve for my video editing, so some of the specific instructions or keyboard shortcuts might not apply directly to you. Or they might not translate well depending on what you're using, but just keep that in mind and remember that at its core this video is more conceptual and for the purposes of giving advice than actually a technical how-to. Alright, so that's it for the intro. Let's get straight into the video. The first step is getting access to where your games will be streamed. So for me this season, my games are streamed on this website, npl.tv. After I've made an account, I can access my games at any time. Of course, this process will look a little bit different for you playing on a team in some other country. Your games might be streamed on YouTube or on some other third-party website. But essentially this process is still the same, no matter what website you're using. The point is, you want access to these games so that you can watch them back and screen record the clips that you want to include in your highlight video. Once you've got access to your games, you'll just have to watch through each one and navigate to the different points that you want to include in your highlight video and screen record them like this. Since I'm using a MacBook, I start my screen record process by pressing all at the same time Command-Shift-5, and then I press Capture Entire Screen. I recommend using Capture Entire Screen rather than just a selected portion, only because you can always crop out what you don't want at a later point. The next step, organizing all your files on your computer, really should be done at the same time as step 1, while you're gathering all your screen recordings of your match clips. So you can see what I've done for the content that I'm using to make this actual video. I've created a folder on my desktop that's really visible with a title that makes sense to me. I've simply titled it New Video. And for my actual game film that I use to make my own highlight videos, I've got a folder called Match Film, and within that another folder dedicated to the current team I'm playing on, and within that I've got folders for every single game that I've played in. The most important point of this step is to organize all your files on your computer in a way that makes sense to you, and do it early. Once you're done screen recording all the clips that you want to include in your highlight video, and they're organized in a way that makes sense to you on your computer, you'll want to move them into a video editor. Now this third step is basically the same as step 2, but this time it's organizing the files in this video editor that you're going to use. I'm using Davinci Resolve, so it might look a little bit different depending on what video editor you're using, but the idea is the same. Keep the files organized so that when you're moving through your project, you know where to find everything that you're looking for. So as you can see on my screen, I've created different folders. Davinci Resolve calls them bins, each one for a different section of the video that I'm making. This is how I've chosen to organize all my content while making this video. But again, it's whatever works best for you. This is just something I strongly encourage as part of your video editing process. Organization speeds everything up. Okay, so you've got all your content in your video editor and it's organized in a way that makes sense to you. Now it's time to start the fun part, the actual video editing. This is also the most important part because this is how people will be judging you as a player. It's important to put your best foot forward, not only in the way that you're playing on the field, but the way you edit these videos. There are a few rules that you really should follow. Firstly, no replays. Remember, assume that the important people that are watching your video, the coaches, scouts, agents, know what they're looking at and they know good football when they see it. You don't need to slow a play down or show different replays for them to appreciate that you've made an impact. All it does is make the viewer impatient and want to close your video. What will impress them the most is seeing lots of different plays packed into a short period of time. Another important part of the editing process is making sure that it is clear which player you are. I like to do this with freeze frames combined with a red circle. You're going to want to make sure the freeze frame doesn't slow down the video too much, so it should be just enough that the viewer can distinguish which player you are. And like I said, I like to use a red circle. It doesn't have to be red, it doesn't have to be a circle. The point is, just make it obvious which player you are. As you're going through your editing process, keep an eye on how long your video is getting. A good rule of thumb is to keep your highlight video between 3 and 5 minutes. If it's much shorter, it might seem like you don't have that many highlights, and if it's much longer, you risk making it less likely that your viewer actually clicks and watches your video. Once you're finished editing all your highlight clips, you must make sure you include an introduction. This can either be a clear picture of yourself, or a short video of yourself on the field where it's easy to make out who you are. The important part of this introduction is giving your viewer a chance to read some statistics and background information on you. So things like your position, your height, your weight, your age, date of birth, your current team, your statistics, and your nationality. So for this video, I've chosen an example of myself walking out onto the pitch with my team, and I've added this little graphic of a marker above my head so that the viewer can see which player I am. As you can see, I've chosen a graphic from Canva, which is a great graphic design app, and you can get it for free. I'm sure there are lots of different websites and apps just like it, but I'll give my personal recommendation for Canva simply because I've had a great experience with it so far. Of course, I'll run into a problem when I'm using a static image to highlight myself when I'm moving in a video. Luckily, there's a solution to that problem, and it's called keyframes. So I'll start by moving the marker into a good initial position, and then every few frames, I'll pause it and add a new keyframe for the position of this marker by clicking on one of those gray diamonds just to the right of the position dimensions. If I do that every few frames and update the position of the marker according to where I am in the video, I'll end up with a pretty nice looking dynamic player marker. Now that I can see what this graphic marker looks like on my video, I'll probably decide that I want something that's solid instead of an outline, so that it'll be clearer to see. But the important part for this video is that you just see what I'm doing and generally how I'm doing it. Now you want to make sure that the text that you add in this intro section is easy to read. That means that the font size is large enough and the color doesn't blend in with the picture or video that you've got in the background. Remember that it's all about presentation. You want to make a good first impression because this is the first thing that a coach or agent or scout is looking at that's a reflection of who you are as a player professionally. Once you've finished with your introduction, the next thing you want to think about is your audio. This step is not quite as crucial as the others, but you want to make sure you don't make a bad first impression with the audio that you choose, so it's important to get this right. Now, the reason I say that this is not as crucial as the other steps is because I have heard of some coaches watching highlight videos with the sound completely off. Ultimately, the reason they're watching this is to watch how you play, and not to hear some background music. I still think it can be a nice touch to have some music in the background, but it shouldn't be too loud and distracting for the viewer. If you've got the actual audio from the game or if there's commentating, it might be useful to just preserve that and use that as the audio for your highlight video. I like to go to YouTube and search up no copyright music. Because I know that I'm going to be posting my highlight videos on YouTube, I want to make sure that the videos don't get marked as copyright strikes. For many of these no copyright tracks, it's important that you make a note of the description under the video because often they ask that you include the title, the artist, and the channel where you got the track from in your own video's description. There's a bunch of YouTube channels dedicated to no copyright sounds and music, and I'll often just spend 30 minutes or so surfing on these channels looking for a track that feels right. Then I open up one of the YouTube to MP3 converters on Google. There's loads of these as well, and I'll paste in the link and download the MP3 file. After that, I can just import that MP3 file straight into my video editor, and there you go. Simple. Once you've got an audio track in your project, you're ready for the last step. This is an easy step, but you must make sure you include this. If your goal for releasing a highlight video on the internet is ultimately to get an offer from a team, then you must make sure they have a way to contact you. As always, make sure this information is clear and easy to read. I don't think it's a bad idea to have this contact page at the beginning and end of your highlight video. Include as many forms of contact as you can, and WhatsApp is a great option because people can call you from their phones internationally. Alright guys, that'll do it for this one. Stick around if you want to check out the sample highlight video that I've created for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Spares the blushes of the defender there. Just almost fell. The man who scored a brace last weekend.
I was just trying to see if the sun was involved there from three. I can't quite see from this angle where we are in the grandstand, but yeah, just floated over the top of him there. Delakovsky learnt to gamble. Clark, he's looked so assured. He's really good saves. I mean, to be fair, probably could have done a little bit better with a few of these shots that they've hit. They've been a little bit weak, a little bit low, but all the same, Clark's dealt with them very well.
He's a super catcher, Lockie Clark. As Stone rolls it through for spin. He sends it outside. Big chance here for Stevie cutting inside over the top from the fullback Wilcox.
Blocking off a lot of these